Welcome to the Grow Your Business and Grow Your Wealth podcast with Gary Heldt. Gary is an expert in helping business owners put together a plan that will provide a better future for their businesses, themselves, and their families. On the podcast, Gary interviews other professionals who share his vision, and together they share secrets and strategies any business owner can use to build a better financial foundation for your business and your life.
Welcome back to the podcast. This week, my guest is Scott Reib, and he is of Reib Law. Welcome, Scott.
Hey, Gary. Thanks for having me on the show.
So, Scott, what made you get into law? What was it that kind of gets you up every morning, get you fired up, get you going?
Yeah, I was interested in the law practice from like middle school. I can remember career day, and I was raised in a smaller town, and when the lawyers came in, and everyone really thought he was a big shot. And I remember thinking that would be a good thing to do. And so I talked a lot about it as I was growing up and even into high school, and then got into college and got into business school and really liked business stuff and got interested in marketing and advertising and kind of went down that road. I graduated in 1991 from Southwest Baptist University with a marketing degree. And back in 91, if you were out there, there weren't a lot of jobs. There especially weren't a lot of marketing jobs. Everyone wanted you to sell. So I tried to sell lots of things. I ended up with a major telecom company selling phone system parts and aftermarket stuff, and had a contract with them. I was an authorized agent. And so I basically had my own little business and was doing fairly well for a 23-year-old. And then I discovered in their system that back then, especially you bought equipment, you would get an extended warranty, and those would usually expire 4 years in. Well, I found in their computer system that I could pull up their database, a report of every expiring extended warranty, and pull it up a new quote for 4 more years. And so I drafted a really nice sales letter, sent them that contract, and over half of them would come back, and the company was going to pay me on you take the 4 years of premium, and I got a percentage of that as my commission. So then I started calling on them, and I ended up with about 80% of that coming back. Wow. Well, got a new manager, and the new manager loved what I was doing, thought it was genius, but wanted to take that and give it to a minimum wage person to do instead of me.
Of course.
So she didn't worry a whole lot about my contract. And I was in Tulsa, Oklahoma at that time. They sent me to a part of Oklahoma that really didn't even have phones. They did, but not a lot of business systems. Right. And so she sent me there to die. And I decided then that I wasn't going to make those same mistakes again. There were some things in the contract that I shouldn't have done. I met with one of my parents' friends who was a lawyer who was kind enough to meet with me. And he's like, "What are you going to do? They're a big dog. You can't really go after them." And so I asked him some questions about law school. And then I had a brother-in-law that was just finishing up. And so he kind of told me about how the financial aid worked and the loans. And I'm like, you know what? Job market's horrible. Why don't I go to law school? And so kind of rekindled that dream. And my wife and I moved to Norman, Oklahoma, and I became a Sooner and went to three years of law school. And it was a really good 3 years of life. If you've worked and then go back to school full time, school's amazing. Right. I'd get up at 8, go to class, eat lunch, go play basketball with the guys, maybe run a couple of errands, go home, make sure dinner was ready, and then I might study a little bit at night. Right. If you treat it like a full time job, it's really it's not what you and I do now. Right. And so it was a great 3 years. We had no money, but we were happy and had a simple life. And then got out of law school, and I've been practicing law ever since 1996.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
We'll go into a little bit later, kind of, how you view this now with business law and what you do. One of the things that you talk about is, strategies to shatterproof your business. Can you talk about those?
Yeah, and I've got a book coming out, The Shatterproof Entrepreneur, that takes you through those 6 phases. But shatterproofing a business is basically, let's build a business that will bend and not break, right? There's and you and I before we started recording, we're talking about the the mistakes that small business owners make when starting business. Michael Gerber calls them entrepreneurial seizures.
Mm-hmm.
Most of us were really good at doing something, and then we're like, hey, let's make that a business instead of whoever was getting all the money before, our other old boss will make all the money. And then we suddenly find out that now we didn't have just one job, but we had multiple jobs, and we had a crazy boss. And so you kind of either you give up you throw your hands up and give up and get out of business, or you just accept that you're going to be a slave to it and you just keep grinding, or you figure out how to go back and start putting some of those things in order. And a shatterproof business has done that. They've gone back and they've built a solid foundation, right? The solid foundation to me would be you have like some key advisors. You have a CPA that tells you how to keep score and manage your cash flow. You have a banker that helps you with lines of credit, make sure your checking accounts are set up right and is there for you in emergencies. You have a lawyer that is entrepreneurial and understands the journey you're on and can help you put deals together and have contracts that document what you're doing in a way that will promote business, not kill business, and that they're charging you in a way that's efficient. And then you have an insurance guy that covers risk, because there's no matter how you set up, there's going to be risk. So you need to have the insurance in place. And then you need a business coach that can help you. You can bring your vision to them about where you want to go, and then say they can give you a path. Maybe it's not A to Z. Maybe they can get you from A to G, but they've got a path and can hold you accountable and look at things from a different perspective. And by having that key board of advisors as a critical juncture in a business, if you don't already have that, the best time to start is now. Right. Don't say it's too late. Just start now and assemble that team so you have those things covered. And then once you have them, the next step you do in your foundation is you make sure you have the right legal entities in place. And so that's corporations and LLCs. So if you're listening and you're running your business and you don't have a corporation or LLC, then you are your business, which is easy. It's a simple way to run your business, but it creates all kinds of problems for you that you may not be aware of, because anything your business does, you're now responsible for. Mm-hmm. And that liability can come home. And if you've been profitable, you've invested that money in other assets. Now those are all at risk if your business messes up. By simply creating one LLC or corporation to run your business, it now separates you from your business, and you no longer have to worry about all your hard-earned income and assets being at risk. And so those are two of the things that you would do if you want to be on your way to having a shatterproof business.
Now, what advice would you have, Scott, for somebody that, okay, maybe they've been in business for 10 years and, again, they set up their business. They may have created their LLC or their corporation, but they don't have bylaws or minutes to meetings or articles of well, they would have their articles. What advice would you give them if they don't have all of this stuff?
Yeah, so get with a business lawyer that understands what you're doing and start fixing that, right? So if you have an LLC, but maybe you don't have all the documents with it because either you didn't do them or you've lost track of them. I run into that a lot of times where it's like, I know I had an operating agreement, but I can't find it. Well, you can recreate it and do a restated operating agreement, which would have more current language in it. As long as all the members are alive and willing to do it, then you can recreate that. And then you need to have a system for documenting. Gary mentioned minutes, and the minutes are just basically documentation of decisions that are made, usually major decisions in the business. It's a good habit to do that at least annually, to have an annual meeting with just you, with yourself, and document the annual things that you've done. If you've leased a new building, bought new equipment, hired new people, document that in a very simple system. Just with, it says titles, minutes, the date of the meeting, what company it's for, and here's the major decisions that were made, and sign that thing. And then, keep it either in a folder, a paper folder, or digitize it and make sure you've got it in the cloud somewhere and keep all that stuff together. And because the first thing the IRS asks for if your business were to get audited is, where are your corporate books? And some people think they mean like your QuickBooks. That's not what they mean. They want to see your corporate documents, that you're formed correctly and that you're actually running this as a corporation or LLC. And it's not just a sham It's just you. And by having followed those formalities, it's evidence that you are doing it correctly. It's not required necessarily for an LLC, but it's evidence that you're doing it right. It's too easy not to. And so that would be the way you would do that.
Now, you mentioned an operating agreement. Can you tell everybody what an operating agreement is there for?
Yeah, sure, Gary. That's a great thing. Yeah, an operating agreement is the agreement on how you're going to run your LLC. Some states will call it a company agreement. It's the same thing. If you don't have one, every state has a business code of some sort that says how LLCs run. You don't generally want to do it that way because there's going to be some things in it you don't like, or there'll be some ambiguity and you could get stuck. I've got a client right now that is in a 3-person partnership related to some real estate, and one partner isn't behaving very well. It's just not being really nice and not being supportive of what they're doing, and they don't have an operating agreement in place, and so it's making it really difficult to figure out how to get rid of them because they don't have the basic things you have in an operating agreement, like how meetings are held, where they can be held, can they be virtual, how much notice do you have to have, and how is that notice given? And you may be thinking, well, it's just me. Why do I need that? Well, at some point, your business may grow and you may need someone else as a member, or something happens to you and your LLC passes to the next generation and there's more of them than you. Well, then they need to know, how do we vote? How do we move forward? And so the operating agreement is just simply setting up those rules for how my company is going to run. And it's called an agreement because it's a contract between the owners. And that may just be you, but you still want to have that because it's a key document for any LLC. If you have a corporation, you're going to have bylaws that accomplish very much the same goal.
Now, many people think that, oh, I can go on LegalZoom or wherever and just grab ones off of there and then I'm good. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. And there's so many resources now to get legal documents. If you're listening, I've got air quotes. And some of them are fairly strong. But just because they're strong for one person doesn't necessarily mean they're strong for you. Your company agreements and operating agreements need to be customized some to fit how you want to run your business. And if you just download it off the shelf, it won't be. There's also some things from an asset protection standpoint that I think shouldn't be in most LLC operating agreements. For instance, if you download one from any of the legal.com things, they're gonna have a section for allocations of profits, and it's going to tell you have to do it quarterly or annually and pay them. And by doing that, by having that in the document, if you ever get a judgment against the LLC, then the judgment creditor is going to have the right to have that profit distributed to them. And so you want generally to have a statement in there that's up to the members, or if it's manager managed, the managers, when those profits will be distributed and if they will be. So if you don't do that, you're losing some of your protection. And there's some other things that just need to be a little bit customized. And you're not going to find that on the legal.coms, and you're not going to know how to do that even as a very smart, high performing business owner, because it's just not what you do.
Right. In some of your stuff that you've written that I've read, you talk about making sure that your attorney is more like your primary care physician and not an ER doctor.
Right.
And can you talk to us about that?
Yeah, like as we're sitting here today, I'm 55 years old, and before I turned 40, I decided that I needed to get in better shape. I had started the law firm a few years before, had kind of lived on a fast food diet and working around the clock and raising 2 boys, and kind of got just kind of let my body go. And so I hired a trainer, went on Weight Watchers, and got back in shape, and have stayed fairly in shape for the last 15 years. Some fluctuation, but I've always been able to get back in. And the way I've done that is I've had trainers. And so I'll meet weekly at least with a trainer to adjust my workouts, to make sure I'm doing it right, to talk about what I'm eating. And so we're on that kind of a maintenance schedule for how do I stay healthy. And also, so I have someone else looking at me besides me in the mirror, because I look in the mirror and I think I always look good. I need someone that can be a little more critical. And so that trainer can go, hey, looks like you put on a little weight. We may need to adjust some things. And maybe it's more cardio, or you need, what are you eating? They can ask questions that, my wife doesn't really want to ask me, and I don't want her to have to do that. But by
Right.
having that relationship in place from the physical side, I can kind of stay within a healthy zone of physical fitness. On the legal side, it's very similar, because you don't know what you don't know. And you're locked into your business, making business decisions every day. And sometimes you don't even realize there's a legal ramification to that. But if you're having regular check-in calls with your lawyer, where they're asking you questions about what have you been doing, what's coming up, how are you doing these things, and you just have conversation like we're having on this podcast, then suddenly things come to light that's like, oh, you shouldn't be doing it that way. You need to change that and do that. Or, hey, you need this document in place to make sure your customers are signing this. That would never come up until you had a problem if you didn't have the maintenance relationship with a business lawyer. And it's, we've got clients that have been with us now 8+ years that initially were like, well, I've never had a lawyer. I'm not sure I really need one. But once you start walking down that road and having this ongoing conversation, right? Because it's not just once a month meeting. We're exchanging text messages, emails. And so there's this constant conversation that's now happening on the legal side of their business, so they can have peace of mind and sleep at night, knowing that they've got that right there if they need it. And they've had this regular conversation. So the chances of making a really big mistake are much smaller. One of the things that we'll see happen to people that don't have lawyers is that they'll be their own registered agent for their corporation or LLC. And the registered agent, for the listeners, is the person that the government would give notice to if there's an issue with your entity, your LLC or corporation. They also they get served with notice of lawsuits. Well, if you say I'm responsible and I can get that, and then you start hiring people, and maybe you're out doing the sales because that's what you're doing right now. You're not in the office very much, and they try to serve you, but you're never there. Eventually they can get what's called substitute service, and they post it on the door. Well, if you have an administrative person, they might grab it and forget to give it to you, or put it somewhere where you don't see it. And then you end up with a default judgment against you, and the judges don't care. They're going to say, we have an affidavit from a process server saying they tried to serve you, and we posted it on your door. That was the notice required by law, and you now owe $100,000 for something that you might have had a really good defense to, all because you didn't have a lawyer to tell you, hey, you shouldn't be your own registered agent. It's just one of those little small hinges that can swing a really big door in a negative way if you're not careful.
Right. Well, how do you, when you're talking to clients about this and saying, hey, look, you really need to have us or another attorney part of your team to do this. And like you said, lots of times the business owners like, oh, I don't need an attorney. I don't have any reason to. And they worry about the cost.
It's a
how
great
do
question.
you address that?
Yeah. And with us, you can, if you apply and it's a good match, you can be in one of our programs for less than $6,000 a year. Right. And so if you're in a new business and don't have $6,000 a year, you're probably undercapitalized. And if you're running an existing business and don't have enough profit margin to pay $6,000 to $10,000 a year to make sure the legal side of your business is covered, then you got to look at something. There's something going on in your business that's not right, because it's not something you can do without. Just because you haven't had a problem yet doesn't mean there's not one lurking. And you want to have someone looking at that for you from a different perspective while you're out making money, doing what you're supposed to be doing. And so it's just, you really can't afford not to have it. And some business owners don't get it, and that's okay. They're just not, that's just not someone that we're wanting to work with. But there are a lot of business owners that are like, hey, I see that I don't know everything, and I don't want to go to legal.com and don't download documents. I want to ask you for a document, and you give me a document that I know I can trust. And so if that's what they're looking for, they can do that. And then by having the controlled subscription or access subscription, you know what your costs are. If you were to just use a lawyer on the call basis, and they're generally going to require a retainer, which is going to be $2,000 or $3,000 minimum, and then they're going to bill you $300 to $500 an hour on the low end every time they touch something for you. And so your costs can get out of control very quickly. And instead of having a set budgeted amount that hey, this is what's going to cost me this year to have the legal support that I need for where we are right now. And we have 4 different levels for what I call the different stages of business, so that you can make sure you have the right coverage for where you are in business.
So what are some of these things? Because I think it's something that the listeners need to understand, is that there are things that you would, as our attorney on our team, that you would be looking at on an annual basis that you would be doing. Can you kind of give us some of those things that you would do?
Sure. One of the things we do is you usually look at whatever your base offering is to your customers or clients, and make sure that document is reviewed annually so that it stays in compliance with changes in the laws. It's we've looked at feedback maybe you've gotten from clients. If any resistance to any certain points, can we say it in a better way, a more friendly way? And so we update those. The other thing we do is we make sure you have a good employment system. So from application to offer letter to employment agreement, do you have a really clean set of documents that make it where your employees understand what their obligations are, and you have a clear way of ending it if you need to? And then the other thing we do is employee handbooks, so that you've got a discipline system set out. You have how does vacation work? All the little nuanced things once you have employees. And then it's just the on the go, like, hey, we're getting a website, and here, the website vendor sends us a contract. Well, we review that contract as those come in, because like one of the things that we'll see a lot is that the website creator owns the website. And if you're not careful, they can hold you hostage for that. And so you have to make sure that's right. Or maybe you're using some freelancers to create graphics for you, or landing pages or videos. Well, you want to make sure that you have the right work for hire clause in the contract with them that says you own the intellectual property. Another thing that we work with on our clients is I call it the IP wheel. It's an inventory of your intellectual property.
Right.
Intellectual property is all your ideas and things you create, from blog posts to videos to books or booklets. All those things have value, including your brand name, and you want to make sure that you own and can dominate that stuff in the marketplace. And so those are just a few of the things that we talk about on a regular basis with our clients.
Yeah, I think that's important, especially now. The more we're going AI route and things like that, people are trying to protect their intellectual property, and a lot of them aren't getting it done. They're not getting it done timely. Don't understand, hey, if I put that out there in AI, somebody can take it. And so I think that's something that people really need to think about as they're going through that.
Yeah.
Scott, we covered a bunch of stuff. It's like I could keep talking, because I think so much of this stuff is really important to business owners, because I've seen companies fail because they haven't had these legal documents. And I've seen where you're talking about the real estate partners that are fighting or whatever. I've had businesses where there's been 3 owners and they didn't have any type of an operating agreement or bylaws or anything, no minutes, no anything. And their company ended up going under because of the fighting that they had, and nobody could get rid of it, and all 3 of them were heading in different directions. So I definitely think it's important. What have I not asked you that you wish I had?
We haven't talked about any legacy or succession planning, and it's a huge thing for most small business owners. You need to make sure that if you're a business owner, that at base level, you at least have a last will and testament in place. If you don't, your business is very likely to be shut down by a probate process in your state. So you need to have the most efficient way possible. I love the living trust for business owners, but you've got to have a will so that whoever's in charge has an efficient way to get someone with authority to make payroll. You miss one payroll in most businesses and everyone's gone.
Right.
No matter how much they loved you. So make sure you've got those kind of documents in place so that there's a way for this business that you poured your heart and soul into to live on after you, even if that means they're going to sell it to someone, but it can disappear in a heartbeat. And I got an email yesterday from one of my clients who is a coach, and one of his clients had passed away without doing a will, and the business, and I actually knew the guy, and his business is being shut down because they can't get through probate fast enough.
Yeah.
It's a big deal.
It is. It's a huge deal. And I think that many of us, as we started out when we were much younger, thought we're invulnerable, but we're all getting to that age where we need to think about this, and what legacy are we going to leave for our kids, right, or whatever. But if we don't have some type of an exit strategy in place, the family isn't going to get as much as we want them to get, if anything. And it's definitely, without that succession plan, it doesn't help your clients either.
Right. Yeah. Everyone gets left in a lurch, and your failure to plan at that point doesn't hurt you because you're gone, but right, it just leaves a real mess. And most business owners that I know don't want to do that. It's unintentional if they do, but make a point in this year, 2024, to take care of some of that stuff, so that if something happens to you, because it's really when, right? It's when, either you're going to become disabled and then pass away, or you're just going to pass away. It's life. That's right. Big a part. Death is part of it. And so make sure you've got a plan so that your loved ones, and including your team, aren't left in a lurch. It's a huge thing.
Right. So Scott, if people like what they hear and they want to talk to you about your program and stuff like that, how can they reach out to you?
Yeah, the best way is on social media would be on Instagram at the Scott Reib. It's really easy to find me there. We drop content almost every day, and then you can DM me for questions. And then we've created a landing page just for the show audience. It's reiblaw.com, reiblaw.com/Gary H. And if you'll go there, you can actually book a free 20-minute session with me where we can talk about your business, and I can give you some insight on what I see and make sure that you leave with some value.
Great. Scott, I really appreciate your time. I think our listeners have definitely gotten a lot from today. If not anything, they need to talk to you to make sure that they have their house in order, even if they are many years down the road from the time they originally opened their businesses.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure being on, and it's like I told you before, I really like your show and the way you do it, and look forward to talking to you again.
Great. Thanks a lot. Appreciate it. This week, my guest was Scott Reib with Reib Law. See you guys next week.
49 faces looked to him in triumph. Over the last 12 months, they had each taken turns and promoted his business for a week at a time, driving over $987,342 in revenue. What if you had a network of 50 centers of influence who promoted your business every week for a year? Grab your copy of the #1 Amazon best-selling book, The Ultimate Guide to Growing Your Business with a Podcast, at 33% off the Amazon price by going to ultimatepodcastbook.com. Again, that website for 33% off the Amazon price is ultimatepodcastbook.com.